All right, let's get right to it. We're conducting an operational analysis of the Vizcaya front, specifically focusing on the situation at the start of May 1937. Now, this is an absolutely critical juncture. The initial nationalist offensive has culminated, and what we have is an operational pause. Both sides are using this time to regroup, reorganize, and prepare for what's going to be the decisive phase of the campaign for Bilbao. And just for context, all the intelligence and analysis for this briefing comes from the Batallion's Guerra Civil project. It's an incredibly thorough body of work compiled by Colonel Victor Rodrigo, and it provides the solid doctrinal foundation for everything we're about to cover. So, here's our agenda. We'll start by establishing the situation on the ground at the end of April. From there, we'll examine the reorganization of both the Nationalist forces and the Basque Army. Then we'll put their orders of battle head-to-head. And finally, we'll place all of these operational factors into the much broader strategic and political context of May 1937. Okay, Section 1. Let's establish the baseline, the situation as it stood at the close of April. This was, as I mentioned, a period of operational pause, which means it was a time for critical assessment by both commands. What you're looking at here is the map from April 30th, and it really shows the high watermark of the Nationalist advance. Their initial momentum had carried them this far, but it also stretched their logistics thin and brought them up against increasingly stiff resistance. This wasn't a failure, you understand, but a natural culmination point in the offensive. It forced a full stop to consolidate, resupply, and plan the next move. So here's what it all boils down to. For the Nationalists, the initial exploitation phase was officially over. Their supply lines were getting long, and enemy resistance was actually hardening, especially after the bombing of Guernica, which galvanized their opponents. Their next big objective, the formidable Iron Ring defending Bilbao, wasn't something you could just rush. It required a deliberate, well-supported assault from a properly established base of operations. Now, from the Basque perspective, the strategy was much simpler and, frankly, more desperate. Just resist everywhere, delay the advance at all costs, and hope, pray, for some kind of strategic reversal on other fronts that could save them. Which brings us to the Nationalist response. Faced with this new operational reality, General Mola initiated a pretty significant transformation of his forces to get them ready for this next, much tougher phase. And this reorganization was a major step up in terms of professionalization. You see, the ad hoc columns that had conducted that initial advance were now formally converted into proper brigades. The entire command was then structured under a brand new VI Army Corps, led by General Lopez Pinto. This created a much more robust, much more conventional command and control structure, one that was fit for a complex set-piece battle. And the results of all this reorganization? An absolutely overwhelming concentration of force. General Mola now had more than 70 battalions at his disposal, and that's including the Italian Black Arrows Legionary Division. This was a truly formidable instrument of war, and it was poised to break the Basque defenses. Now, let's look at the corresponding moves on the Basque side. They were reorganizing too, but they weren't driven by success. They were driven by a deepening military crisis. On May 5th, something really momentous happened. The civilian president of the Basque government, José Antonio Aguirre, took direct personal command of the entire army. You have to understand, this was fundamentally a political act meant to solve a military problem. The goal was to unify a fractured command, restore shattered morale, and create what they called a national command for a national problem. So under Aguirre's direct command, a new structure was rapidly put in place. The Army of Ascari was organized into 5 divisions, which were made up of a total of 20 brigades. At the same time, new conscripts were being mobilized to fill out the ranks. It was a serious attempt to create a military structure that could actually stand up to the professional organization they were facing. And, on paper, the numbers looked pretty impressive. If you include the reinforcements that were rushed in from Santander and Asturias, the Basque command could count a total of 92 battalions. But, and this is a critical but, many of these units were still being formed. They were poorly equipped, and they really lacked training and combat experience. And this image right here, this illustrates the core material weakness of the Basque forces perfectly, their artillery. They had just 61 field pieces in total. And as you can see, it was a complete logistical nightmare, a hodgepodge of different models and calibers, everything from Cup to Schneider to Vickers. This was in stark contrast to the concentrated, standardized, and far more numerous artillery of the Nationalists. So, with both forces now reorganized, let's put them side by side. Let's compare their deployments and their operational plans as they squared off for the next round. Here, we can do a direct visual comparison. On your left, you've got the Nationalist deployment as of May 6th. I want you to note the concentration of the 1st, 2nd, and 4th Navarre brigades. This is the main striking force, and it's aimed at the south and east of the Iron Ring. Now look to the right. This is the new Basque divisional deployment on May 9th, attempting to form a coherent defensive front to absorb that very blow. Now, what's really fascinating here is the insight this gives us into nationalist operational planning. This was not some rigid, single-minded plan. It was actually built around flexibility, designed to adapt based on the level of enemy resistance they encountered. The High Command essentially laid out 3 distinct courses of action. Option 1, if resistance turned out to be weak, the advance on Bilbao would just continue without a pause. Option 2, if resistance was moderate, they would conduct probing attacks against the Iron Ring to find a weak point and then exploit it. But if resistance proved to be considerable, they had a third option: fix the Basque Army in place with a frontal assault and then execute a wide flanking maneuver through Valmaseda with the ultimate goal of completely isolating Bilbao. This is sophisticated, multi-option planning at its best. Finally, we have to zoom out. This battle for Vizcaya wasn't being fought in a vacuum. It was profoundly influenced by these huge political and international events that were rapidly coming to a boil in May of 1937. You see, during this exact period, events at sea were dramatically cranking up international tensions. The conflict was threatening to spill over its borders, and it was dragging the major European powers deeper and deeper into the vortex. I mean, just consider this rapid sequence of events. On April 26th, you have the bombing of Guernica, which sends shockwaves around the world. Just over a month later, on May 29th, Republican planes attack the German pocket battleship Deutschland. And then, just 2 days after that, the German fleet retaliates by bombarding the city of Almeria. The war was right on the verge of becoming a general European conflict. And this quote from the Republican minister Jesus Hernandez, it perfectly captures the growing pessimism inside the Republican High Command. This combination of military defeats, like the one that was looming in the north, and this incredibly dangerous international situation, it created a sense of what he called a hopeless agony. This concludes our operational overview. For a more granular, detailed study of this campaign and others, we refer you to the primary source material, which is all available at batallasguerracivil.es. So we'll end with a final question for your own strategic reflection. When you consider everything, the reorganization, the new unified command under Aguirre, and the raw material realities we've discussed, was the army of Euskadi truly in any position to halt the methodical and massively powerful nationalist offensive? That really is the central question of May 1937.